Welcome back to another Kicking Tables. Today we'd like to introduce Jason 5-Volt Abrahams here to talk to us about his game Star Eater coming December 7th to Kickstarter. Jason, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So Tico and I have had the chance to play your game on Tabletop Simulator, and we had a great time playing it. But why don't you tell everybody what Star Eater is and kind of how it plays through?
Okay, sure. So Star Eater is a tactical space combat game that has a couple of twists on it. So it's basically built around a system of momentum. So you control a large warship in deep space, and every time that you move, you accrue momentum, which will keep moving you forward turn after turn. And this ties in with a few other mechanics, like your weapons will accrue heat, and you can't use them every turn, and other things that help build up the consequence so that you have to plan turns ahead to try and predict your opponent and corner them into a bad situation and destroy them.
It is the momentum thing that really threw me for a loop. So I want you to explain to those listening how that actually translates into the game, because it's not just your ship's going to go forward. It's
Yeah.
actually going to go. I'll let you explain it because I really had to wrap my head around this, and it's so unique to this kind of space combat game.
Yeah. Okay. So in space, there's no friction and no atmosphere, and any competently designed warship would theoretically be able to move in 6 degrees of freedom. So in Star Eater, your ship can thrust in any given direction. It has bigger thrusters on the back, so it can go faster forward. And actually, you know what? I have a visual aid here that can probably help because I've got the prototype copy.
As long as your
So
background doesn't make it disappear, we'll see.
Ooh, oh yeah, it is making it disappear. You know what?
Yeah.
Maybe I can turn that off. All right, so Starter is played out on a hex grid, and every turn you will apply thrust to your ship, and that will create momentum, which is represented with these hexagonal tokens. So every turn, when you move your ship, you'll take a momentum, which will stay in that spot on the board,
Okay.
and you can move in any of the 6 directions based on wherever your ship is facing. You can also move forward faster.
Okay.
And once you have that token, your ship will move in that direction, continuing turn after turn until you deliberately thrust to remove it.
Right.
So
So
if you
in
had
that,
a,
so not necessarily moving forward, it's moving in that direction regardless of the way the ship is facing.
that's right. So like you can strafe around. So if you had your momentum in that direction and your ship was facing sort of up, I'm not sure how well that's coming across on the video stream, you would still be moving down and diagonal.
Right.
And you can use this to strafe and move your ship offline so you can rotate and keep moving in the same direction and then attack a different target or aim a precision shot.
Now, even rotate, you would continue to rotate until you counteract that rotation.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
it's
So the
so it's like
rotation. So there's a trade-off there. There's
you
a
really
trade-off.
have to wrap your mind around the movement in this game. It's actually it's brilliant. Honestly, it's brilliant. I have never seen anything like it, and I really had to wrap my head around it while we were playing.
Yeah, I had a
Thanks.
lot of fun with that. Just planning out. Like I know I'm rotating this way, so I'm going to plan to fire in like a turn or two. So when I'm facing the right direction, and it was really fun to sort of have that mindset of planning out that attack later on.
Mm.
Um, so I'm kind of curious, what was the inspiration? What led to like what was it that popped into your head? It's like this is going to be a fun way to build a game. How did you come up with the idea?
So I've always been really fascinated. I know like a lot of people watch sci-fi when they're kids, and they always wanted to be the hotshot pilot, like the Luke Skywalker or whatever. But I was always so much more interested in being the commander. Like at the top of the chain of command, you always see the guy in the ship, and he's always on screen for just a little bit of time. I think it's James L. Jones's character in
Admiral
Battlestar
Adama.
Galactica. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep, he was like my favorite, of course, because he's
Yes.
way cooler than Starbuck or anything like that. He's there making it all
Well,
happen.
let's not diss Starbuck. Come on, Katie
Okay,
Sackhoff
I've touched
Starbuck. You can't mess with Katie Sackhoff.
But anyway, so I wanted to replicate the experience of being that guy, and I didn't see that happening a lot in board games or video games or really in any form of media. That was rarely the focus character. It was always the exciting, you know, right in the thick of it,
Right.
twitchy reflex, superhero sports star character. But I think the board game format works way better with like a tactical, slow-paced, cool as a cucumber in command character as, the player's avatar. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to do. So I built everything around that.
How big
Very
is
cool.
the game? Like, how big could it get, and how many players does it accommodate?
Okay, so when we go live on Kickstarter, we'll be going for the base game and then a stretch goal. So the base game will support 2 to 4 players.
Okay.
And that's in a few different modes. So the way the game works is it's a little bit chaotic if you add too many free-for-all players in there. So once you get above 3 players, you can only play team battles.
Okay.
So it'll be 2 versus 2, and you have to coordinate together. And another thing to know is that friendly fire is on, so it's still quite chaotic because you have to avoid shooting your friends. You have to avoid running into your friends,
Yes.
Corvettes that they've sent out in space and stuff like that. And then we're also planning to have a solo and like a 2-player co-op mode that will be a stretch goal. So that'll be a scenario-based, just like you get some setups from cards and you play it out, and it tells you how the game state will evolve, and you have to sort of solve your way through that.
Yeah, again,
scenario.
that inertia-based movement, I can just imagine with all the ships like actually colliding with each other, like just like I can't stop.
Just feels like this very slow crash about to happen. And you've got them happening all over the board, and you're like,
it's going to happen.
Where do I put my attention?
Yeah, it's going to happen, but you can't do anything about it. But it's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the sense of like inevitability and consequence that we were really trying to capture. And I think, not to toot my own horn, but I think we nailed it.
Yeah, you did nail it. Again, from our tabletop simulator experience with it, you definitely nailed that momentum and that sense of oh crap, I'm literally spinning out of control, which is what happened to me once. Because again, wrapping my head around what's going on is every turn I'm spinning again. I'm like, I am literally spinning out of control here.
Yep, and heading towards a wall, and you don't know what to address first. Yeah.
So there's a number of different factions that you can play in the game, and each one has their own unique ships, that can also be modified to sort of suit the individual player style. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yep, sure. So there's 3 basic factions. They're focused on sort of different aspects of strategy that you can use. So there's one faction that focuses on having nimble ships that can sort of move around and hopefully dodge enemy projectiles and get themselves into position for good shots easily. We've got a ship faction that focuses on like shields and ramming. So it's all about getting up close in your opponent's face and like tanking damage and dealing your own damage in response. And then we have a third faction, which is basically it's about planning extra far ahead to land extremely critical, high-powered shots. So all of their weapons have big cooldowns and big damage.
What were your inspirations behind those factions? Are you basing them on science fiction ships we know of, or are they all your own creation?
So they're largely my own creations, but they're heavily inspired. I'd say that the most consistent inspiration is actually an anime series from like the 80s or early 90s called Legend of Galactic Heroes.
Okay.
Which it's quite obscure, so I don't expect that a lot of the Western audience will know it, and I wouldn't know it unless my weirdo friend had informed me about it. And it's actually a really good series. And so they were based off those sort of high tech versus industrialism factions, and visually inspired by that.
Do you have any fun gameplay stories that things you experienced as you were playtesting? And I'd also love to know, as you're creating it, what was one of the most difficult things to get right?
Oh, okay. So for gameplay stories, none that come to mind. I remember I've played at this point hundreds of games with my co-creators, so that if something fun happens pretty much every game.
Okay.
There's a lot of space for creativity and like weird plays and stuff like that. But one thing I do remember distinctly is when we were first playtesting the game was when you have your smaller units, corvettes. Originally, they were conceptualized as squadrons, and you send them out to sort of be like your extra, force multipliers on the field. And when you're a little bit unaccustomed to the movement system and how weapons and everything work, which we were when we were creating it, you shoot them down a lot.
Yeah.
And we've had so many clutch moments where one player would have won, except they accidentally shot their own Corvette, and
no.
then the opponent would come back and like end up taking the game, because it is a bit swingy like that. If you play well, you can really come back from a deep disadvantage.
Yeah.
And sorry, what was the second question?
Struggles you had while developing it. What was the most difficult thing to get right?
Okay, so the most difficult thing by far is probably the broad strokes of making so many complex systems manageable to a player. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there, and I think we've made it pretty intuitive to operate all of the different components and all of the different mechanics. But there was a long stretch of time in there where I think we had 7 turn phases, and we just couldn't make everything fit together well. And going through a round was really a struggle, because you'd have to keep track of, okay, well, now the squadrons have moved, so now we fire the weapons, and if no weapons are firing, then we do all of the other commands, and so on and so forth. And we spent a long time condensing them down, basically just taking 2 sections of the turn and being like, okay, how can we make these compatible with each other so that we can make it into one phase that makes sense and you can sort of keep track of.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the systems in the game, and why don't you take a couple of minutes to explain all those different systems and the different... You actually have different... I can't remember what you call them, but the forward weapons, and you've got the squadrons. Explain how all the different things that you as a commander have available to you on your ship.
So I'll use a visual aid once more, I think. So basically, the ship is composed of 5 major components, and it also carries some corvettes. So this is the board that they all appear on.
Okay.
So before you start the game, you have to load out this board with all of the different component cards that fulfill different roles in each of these slots. So we have the main cannons, and on your ship token, they're at the front and they fire forwards. Most weapons don't move from where they're fired, so they go in a straight line. So you have to line up the ship to get that shot off. And these are normally the big main damage dealers. These are the ones that you want to sort of you want to get this on your opponent and take the shots. And if you can't do that easily, we do also have broadsides. So those sort of shoot out of both sides of this player token. You have one on each side, starboard and port. And these are used for attacks of opportunity. They're usually lower damage, but they're easier to line up because you have more options on where you can be facing. And then we have point defense systems. So both of these first 2 weapons are divided into 4 primary classes. So you can have 4 different types of weapons mounted in each of these slots.
Oh, wow.
So we have projectiles, which just move forward. We have laser beams, which are similar to projectiles, except that they don't persist between turns. So they're just instantaneous. And if something's in range, it gets hit. And we have direct fire weapons, which are they represent your machine guns and your smaller arms, smaller caliber weapons. And they operate based on a dice roll, which is modified by the attack accuracy of the weapon and the evasion of the target. So sort of like an armor class system. And then the final weapon class is torpedoes. So torpedoes are, we think, quintessential to this whole space combat thing. If there's no torpedoes, I think I wrote in a blog post, if there's no torpedoes, can you even say that it was really a space battle? So we have a very simple algorithm. So torpedoes can actually follow their targets, and how it works is they just move across the board until the target is either on the left or right. And when it is, they turn and keep moving towards that target. But they can be countered with this module, which is the point defense turrets. So point defense turrets can attack torpedoes. Again, it uses a sort of dice roll. So there's a little bit of randomness involved. There's a little bit of chance, which we keep in the game because we like that excitement of not knowing for sure if your strategy is going to work, not knowing for sure what's going to happen. And so you can use these to shoot down any torpedoes that are within a certain range of your ship.
Right,
and they can also attack enemy corvettes. So if the enemy is sending corvettes to try and deal little chip damage and poke damage at you, you can attack them with your point defense. Each ship also comes
again,
with a unique...
the corvettes are like the Vipers in Battlestar Galactica.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Just bring it back around.
We can conceive them to be a bit bigger than Vipers. So Vipers are probably, in Battlestar Galactica lore, I'd say less of a threat to giant capital ships, whereas our corvettes tend to be quite a substantial threat.
All right.
So you do actually really need to deal with them. You can't just let them go about, do their business and tank the damage. You actually have to deal with them. And each ship in the game, so there are 9 ships, and each one of them comes with a unique special ability. And this is usually a very powerful effect that takes a long time to cool down. So you can't use it very often. So examples of that are there are things that can manipulate your movement. A lot of them are movement focused. There's one that can give you extra thrust to ram somebody, and you deal extra damage if you do the ramming. There's one that allows you to unroll some of your momentum and teleport back to a previous position that you were in earlier in the turn. Stuff like that. And then the last component is the hangar bay, and this basically operates with your corvettes to give you a special ability when you're launching them. So it'll be stuff like launching them further away, launching them facing in different directions, or repairing them faster if they get destroyed. And then you also have 3 corvettes, which you can pick at the start of the game. Each faction has its own unique set of corvettes that you can choose from. So there's usually an offensive, a defensive, and a utility corvette. Right. And so the utility corvette will do some sort of faction-specific special ability that can help support the other corvettes, whereas you also have typically one corvette that's designed to attack capital ships, one corvette that's designed to defend from other corvettes or incoming torpedoes or stuff like that, and then the utility. So all of these components are controlled through just one set of command cards. So each turn you can play, I should probably mention that Star Eater doesn't have a turn structure per se. It has a simultaneous turn structure where all players will commit to their actions before the turn begins, and they're revealed. So it's hidden information and an action queue. So all of these are controlled from the same set of command cards. So when you're playing your turn, you can't just use everything at once. You have to make decisions about what's your priority in this turn and what's your priority in the future.
Right.
Maybe stop turning, Sean.
Yeah, exactly. And stop the momentum. Get the momentum to stop spinning out of control.
So, Jason, can you tell us maybe tease 1 or 2 of your stretch goals on your campaign for us, and maybe give us an idea if you have any maybe expansion plans or anything like that?
We do have an expansion plan. That will be our final stretch goal. So we're really happy with the level of depth that we've achieved with very, very little, really. Most of the mechanics are quite simple, and you can do quite a lot in this game just by adding new components and just by varying the content that you have. You can create a really different play experience. So expansions are planned. So the first one is obviously the solo mode and the co-op.
So the first expansion is the solo mode and the scenarios that go along with it. So there'll be lightly story-themed scenarios that you get into a space battle and you have to fight your way out of. And the second and larger expansion that we do have planned in a stretch goal is a fortress attack mode. Ooh. So what that is basically you will have it's an asymmetric attack and defense mode where one player controls a giant space fortress that eclipses like the bottom half of the board, and it has its own mounted turrets and its own defensive systems. And other player will be controlling not just one capital ship, but a small fleet of capital ships to try and attack and destroy that fortress.
Very, very
It's
cool.
the assault on the Death Star, basically.
Yes,
exactly.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
What are your plans post Kickstarter? After the Kickstarter's done and you fulfilled, can we buy this online if somebody misses the campaign? What are your plans post Kickstarter?
Yeah, absolutely. So post Kickstarter, we'll be having an e-commerce store will go up on our website. So the Kickstarter, basically for backers on Kickstarter, if you back during the Kickstarter campaign, the only difference is you're getting a significant discount on the product. Okay. So if you back, you get a 20% discount during the Kickstarter campaign. After that, the product will be available on our e-commerce site at full price, which is 85 Australian dollars. So however that translates to your local currency plus shipping. And that will go live basically as soon as the Kickstarter has ended. You can start placing pre-orders through that system.
Very, very awesome. So the Kickstarter goes live December 7th. It's coming up very, very soon. How long is your campaign going to run?
The campaign's going to be running for 35 days. So
Wow.
It should end mid-January. So yeah.
Awesome.
About average, I think, a little bit longer than the average Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, no, it's a good long length. Good luck to you. I know the game is awesome because we've played it. So everybody go check out Star Eater on Kickstarter. Jason, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with the campaign.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Have a good day. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Check out Star Eater on Kickstarter, going live on the 7th of December. And if you like what you see, please subscribe to OMG Nexus. You can find a link for that below.